Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are on this fast forward planet wrapped in so many layers of turbulent change. It's hard to keep track. And this webcast started back in the early days of the pandemic when that was the prime focus. And then, of course, I reverted to climate change, and there's the information superstorm, which will be the focus here today, amid everything, along with geopolitics, etc. I'm Andy Revkin. I'm coming to you from way down east in Maine. And really glad to reconnect with Tina Kelly, who was a colleague of mine at the New York Times for quite a while and has been on her own writing books and about many things, and also on poetry, which is wonderful. And Eric Japil, who's a lawyer, who recently you were at Boston College Law School, is that right?
Yeah, that's where I graduated from.
Right into the pandemic.
Yep.
Yeah, my son, our son Jack, graduated from BU in film and TV right into the pandemic. It must have been an interesting experience.
Yeah, it changed the practice of law very quickly and very sharply.
Yeah, not to mention job. Well, I guess law job prospects probably already are good. And you've had you together. First of all, and we don't have a lot of time, but I wanted to get the origin story of this. You've come up with this concept, this proposal, and a website, and the idea is to get away from the model of tycoons owning platforms through which we all engage to one in which the revenue that comes from the habits that we have online, many of which we're not going to get rid of. Jaron Lanier wrote a book about turning off all your social media, and I don't think that's going to happen. And so what do you do with that, the eyeballs that are there, and who gets the collects the value, the monetary value, and then what do you do with that? It's a really important question. And you wrote a piece for the Philadelphia Inquirer that gets at this. And Common Loop is the proposal. So let's just get right to the genesis here. How did you meet? Why Tina and Eric are you the people with this particular journey that you've designed? And then we're going to get specifically into what you're looking for.
Well, I was working on a book proposal on an organization that works with homeless people, and I was tracking and following a woman who was the head of Family Promise of Union County, who I adore and thought would make a wonderful character in the book that never happened. But I retained custody of her as a friend, and she is Eric's aunt. And so when Eric came up with the idea, there was a committee formed to brainstorm, and that's how Eric and I met.
And Eric, so this initial concept came through you?
Yeah, I really think the genesis was in this late winter, early spring with the federal grant turmoil, shall we say, and
Right.
millions upon millions, billions of dollars of federal grants were suddenly at risk. Grants were frozen or terminated based on concepts high level related to what was framed as DEI. A lot of that disproportionately affected LGBT communities and other communities near and dear to my heart, my aunt's heart. And I was reminded a lot by, I think, what Elizabeth Warren had talked about in terms of the social contract between all of us, but especially in this kind of framing, corporations, for-profit corporations, and us as members of this community, and our tax dollars largely going to fund them in various innumerable ways. Elizabeth Warren kind of posed the question, well, what do they owe us when we provide the tax dollars, we provide the infrastructure, we provide the education and the training and all these professionals that work at and further their profits, and what is given back to us? And so I think the question that I kind of in turn posed is, well, why is this kind of highway of commerce, that being social media, completely controlled by very few and also for-profit companies? And so that's kind of where things came about.
And have you started to utilize your legal background in probing both the possibilities and limits? The limits are significant, again, because this isn't like the airwaves. The Federal Communications Commission kind of doles things out and has regulations, but is there some aspect of internet commerce and dynamics that's outside hard to kind of build that social pipeline around?
In terms of legal barriers, I mean, a couple of things. One, because social media companies are largely protected by the same laws that they very much dedicate many dollars to protecting in terms of limiting and shielding their liability for what's posted on their platforms. So that can't really be taken away from us as they protect it for kind of the field, so to speak. I think the largest issue is setting up a nonprofit company where sponsorship and ad revenue dollars generate most of the revenue, so to speak, that might pose issues from a nonprofit status perspective. But I think there are various ways to counteract that. The largest foundation in the world, nonprofit, is Novo Nordisk, actually. So nonprofits can own and control for-profit companies. So I think the legal challenges are just more of questions about how to solve for those, which for-profit companies do every day. And I don't want to use the word evade, but they sleuth, shall we say, their way around or find loopholes in our legal structure in the U.S. And so I don't think it is actually very challenging. It would either be a nonprofit that owns a for-profit social media company, or just directly have it as a nonprofit social media company, and you change kind of your reporting obligations with respect to the IRS.
Yeah. There's a question that already came in. This is from Patty Morris. Says, needs big bucks to get seated, I assume. Melinda Gates, Mackenzie Scott? Question mark. Have you fleshed things out enough that you think you're ready for that?
I think the answer is yes. I do think that is very much right, and we do need funding in a big fish, so to speak. I'm a little bit biased towards the university ecosystem because that's where I work and I see grants be awarded all the time. And so I think where I would start is with universities and a few nonprofits and building this naturally. And ironically, I think that is kind of how Facebook started as well at Harvard and spread among higher education systems, and then became more generally accessible to the public. And I think that's a growth model we would look to kind of mirror.
That's kind of interesting. You're reminding me of in real time here of this project called The Conversation, which is a sort of a free-floating op-ed page that's largely universities sign on, they contribute some money, and they're experts, they're economists and scientists, don't always have to find a space on the New York Times op-ed page or Philadelphia Inquirer to tell their story. They go to The Conversation and write pieces, and that has this, to some extent, it has the shape you're talking about. Here's Binghamton, Michigan State, Texas A&M, Tufts. So, I don't know if it might be worth talking to those folks. I literally, that as you were saying that, I was thinking about this. Unless you already, it's kind of it feels like a model that's a little bit similar to what you're talking about.
Mm.
And Tina, I don't know if you've ever seen it. I've always liked this. I've done 3-4 years ago. I did a conversation with The Conversation editors, including Beth Daly, who's based in Boston. And
yes, I know some people there. I know
Yeah.
some people there. That's a good point. That'd be a good way to go.
It might reinventing the wheel always feels like if someone's already developed a network and it's focused on academia and on media, it might be an interesting conversation to go forward on. The reality of the constraints that you were described in your piece, the amount of revenue that's flowing to these companies, and here's some of the text of your story. $160 billion a year. I think that number was coming to mind for
just from Meta's ad revenue.
Just Meta, yeah. And I just recently saw, as I was pulling this together, I saw that where is that revenue coming from? It turns out teenage brains are, teenagers' attention is being harnessed, and some number of those billions of dollars is just from young people whose lives are often harmed by these media too. So the case for at least having the possibility of this kind of platform you're talking about feels pretty strong to me.
Yeah, yeah.
And Tina, in your sense, both in your journalistic background and your creative writing, how are you approaching the next steps here?
Well, I'm looking for folks who are motivated in the same ways we are. And part of that would be for people who understand the social dilemma, like in one of your previous episodes, that this is harmful to the human brain to have unfettered access to this kind of technology where the algorithm sends you stuff that's bad for you. And I think about that particularly with young people who have been encouraged in their anorexia or in their suicidality because of what is fed to them over and over again. And it's, if we could work on a platform that was not anonymous, that was very carefully regulated according to age, and that didn't send people stuff just to keep them there longer, just to make them upset and angry, then we could be a force for good.
It sounds, again, this sounds valuable to me. There are other organizations that have gotten into the mix, and I reached out belatedly to folks at the Electronic Frontier Foundation, which has been around for a few decades, trying to kind of create some semblance of a humane and legal rights possibilities in this arena for the users and people who have been used. They have a blog, a podcast called "How to Fix the Internet." I think a good next step might be for us to see if I can have the conversation with you guys and with them. And they're very much in the regulatory end of things too. So that's something I hope for to get at going forward. I wanted to play a clip here from my conversation. It might be 5 years ago, 4.5 years ago or so, with Tristan Harris at the Center for Humane Technology, who I got to know when he came to the New York Times. He said he was 23 when he met with me at the New York Times when I was doing .earth, my blog there, and he had a widget add to the blog Times going to employ called Aperture that gave you as the reader, you're coming to the website and you could kind of, as your cursor went over the keyword, it would pop up and give you a sort of wider view of what that was about. And I loved it. And the Times killed it because even for the New York Times, it wasn't contributing to time on site or the key metrics that every website is tracking. And that was so discouraging to me. But he laid out, and this is just a mini clip. He doesn't get into we talked about Aperture, but here's just what he said about the general reality of the people who are designing these platforms.
To truly get to public interest technology or a humane internet, I think you'd have to move so far beyond the current entrenched business models and platforms that are so embedded in a toxic model, which when we say the business model, I want to clarify, because increasingly recently we've had to get people not to focus so much on the advertising, but on the demands to automate human attention and do engagement at all costs.
Automating human attention.
Bingo.
That's basically what has happened to us, and AI is making it even more powerful by the moment.
But we have power over that. I mean, we're talking about having voluntary time limits. And I know I need that for my Facebook habit. I know there are times when I need my little dopamine where I spend time that I don't want to have spent over looking at what people are posting. If you had an hour limit or a 4-hour limit or whatever it is, it could really be healthy.
This is true. And this gets at something I've been trying to convey to people over and over again. One of the tracks of my Sustain What webcast for the last 5 years has been what I call thriving online. And part of it's about the folks designing the platforms, but a big chunk of it is on how we redesign ourselves. Try to reinvent how we relate to the screens in front of us and the keyboards in front of us. It's about an active approach to social media, as opposed to just letting the feed bathe you in whatever it's designed to bathe you in, which is mostly stuff that takes you in the wrong direction. And in all the research I did on that, I learned increasingly, as Tristan was saying there and has said before, scrolling is a design feature, and it's taking you down literally, too often to the not the productive part of how we react to information or to each other. So I guess if you could lay out, there's the technical questions, there's the legal and financial questions. Just get a little bit more back to the idea of what the next steps are for Common Loop, and we can, or who do you need to talk to? Who should be in the next broadcast? Actually, hold that thought. So that's what my question is. But there's another question that came in from Patty Morris, a writer. She says, I love the idea that you could deploy helpful and fun scrolling instead of unrealistically urging people to just not scroll. I think that's actually, where it has to go. We're not it's like with climate change, with climate technology. People are not good at less, but you can change the forward trajectory. So that maybe a quick reaction to her, and then I'll repeat my question.
It's true. It's like we don't want to do what's good for us. We don't want to eat our vegetables. But if we can create technology where the end result is we're doing what's good for us, then that's ideal.
Absolutely. So I guess, again, getting back to your manifesto, where do we go from here? What would be your ideal next steps? You had the Philadelphia Inquirer piece, and it's now on my blog. It's a couple other on your commonloop.org. What feels like the way to get this on a track toward actualization? Maybe Eric first.
I mean, I think what I envision is we need strong financial backing, not at a scale to, compete with Facebook immediately, but enough to launch and hire a team to kind of build the platform, bare bones, kind of pilot and test it in kind of an enclosed environment. And I think I do envision that, again, as with maybe a few universities or other nonprofit partners at its inception. Students are very, very motivated, I think, to change the world, because they're not jaded, as much jaded yet, but they have abundance of time and dedication to projects like this. So I think university system, again, it's where Facebook was born and grew. I think it is probably the way to go, but to do that, we do need funding. And Tina and I, of all the organizations we've talked to thus far, and some of them are very prominent ones, people are very enthusiastic about this approach. So I think it would be finding a donor or submitting a grant proposal to something. Andy, you had mentioned the Gates Foundation. I think that would be, exactly the kind of partner we're looking for to fund this kind of initial next step and just getting the word out.
Yeah. Now I'm going to play red team, which is, pushback. Like I'm some investor or I'm even at a nonprofit, and I'd say there are influencers online who are already raising money, by being super popular, like Mr. Beast, who I don't pay a lot of attention to, but he's the biggest YouTube account, I think, in the world, and he does all these things. That is there a need to move beyond what that kind of thing looks like to what you're talking about?
Well, it's about the revenue. It's about the revenue that aspiring trillionaires are getting when the other causes need the revenue more. And I think the end users understand that. I think advertisers understand that. I think advertisers understand that some people hate the social media that they're on, and they a beloved social media platform where people sign up and say, yes, I want to be advertised to on this particular topic. You could change that particular topic over time. And you could use local advertisers, small businesses, places that people want to donate their money to and donate their spending to. And if that's where your social media energy is going, then that's a good thing.
Right. So you get that the vibe of the place where your ads show up is positive, not tainted. Well, I really like that idea, Eric, of universities being first movers here. And maybe whether it's through the conversation portal or not, there might be a way to pull in some of the leading folks who think about this. In the other arena I'm thinking about, just as you're saying, as we've been talking, is the basic science. Wait, I gotta find it here. Oh no, I had a slide that is gone. Let me see. I know I've got. Oh yeah, right here. Sorry to flash so many things at you.
Technology is our friend.
It can be, but yeah, there was a paper, research paper several years ago making the point that this entire universe we're talking about is also a research dark black hole. There's been tons of work on social media, studies on social media, but not enough still. This paper, Stewardship of Global Collective Behavior, is looking at this thing that in the early 20th century, Teilhard de Chardin and Vernadsky, a philosopher and a Russian scientist, called the noosphere. It's the emerging planet of the mind. What we've built here is a global connectedness that didn't exist before, and the novelty of that means that even while we're trying to harness, as you are, the the revenue from it, knowing a lot more about how it works, where it's headed, is vital as well. And that makes it a good fit for universities as well, because maybe the data can be more accessible. They said here, our larger, more complex social networks now transfer high fidelity information over vast distances at low costs. The digital age and the rise of social media have accelerated changes to our social systems with poorly understood functional consequences. This gap in our knowledge represents a principal challenge to scientific progress, democracy, and actions to address global crises. We argue that the study of collective behavior must rise to a quote-unquote crisis discipline, just as medicine, conservation, and climate science have, with a focus on providing actionable insight to policymakers and regulators. So that's another reason, I think, having a model that's sort of not what Elon Musk and Zuckerberg have in mind, feels like at least then you can have sort of a case-controlled study even of how to have outcomes that have greater public value.
Yeah.
I would say a few things on that, Andy, if I can.
Absolutely.
One, this is a public health crisis, I think, in a lot of ways, and I think there are top public health schools recognizing that and interested in engaging in this topic and being part of the solution, so to speak. I think it's also surprising that countries like China have more regulation and protections being put into place than we do. China recently passing a regulation that social media influencers can't speak on certain sensitive topics without having some kind of credentialing or degree in the field for which they are commenting on, like finance, health, public health, things like that. And I think what Tina are talking about and what's different from other ideas that might exist currently is we're not trying to argue that we should disavow for-profit companies. I think it's very important to kind of make that point. We want to posit a new kind of relationship where we can kind of tie their corporate ad dollars to our mission, and especially interacting with users. So Mr. Beast, these other people might have their own initiatives, but I think it's important that no one person or institution chooses what happens with that much economic power. And I think what we're kind of trying to create is empowering users to be part of that decision-making process through a lot of transparency and engagement with them.
That all feels great. Well, this has been a good, I think, initial, explanation and introduction to the concepts you have pulled together, and we can go further do more iterations of this conversation going forward. Yeah, it's a Friday, and our time is constrained, and there's lots more to say once we've done maybe another round of outreach to some relevant folks.
Terrific.
But I certainly love what you're up to, and it's bound to be pulling us in a better direction than just letting things unfold the way they are in Washington these days, with the titans of the internet too tight with a particular administration with a particular worldview. So I say the more the better, and that'll do for this quick pop-up conversation of sustain what, and sustaining a functional, thriving information environment that benefits the people using it, and not just a few of the technologists mal designing it, is a key part of sustainability. Thanks, Tina Kelly. Thanks, Eric Gpel, for joining me today. And folks can learn more at revkin.substack.com. And of course, I'll put up it's commonloop.org. You can read the initial call to action and get in touch through that scrolling bar at the bottom with questions and ideas for how to go forward. Take care, and on we go in the information superstorm.
Thank you so much, Andy. This is great.
Great. And now that when this is over,